or continue?
Yeah.
Well,
How do you do
well,
that?
maybe I should hit that with the mouse.
Where's mouse?
Okay. Yes, on July 5, we have an evening scheduled for testimonies. We did that once before and it worked so well that I have had some requests to do it again and still have, I think, 3 openings for 5-minute testimonies. And if we get 6 of them, that's the way it worked last time. It worked out very well. And so if you happen to be one of those people that could be enticed in a couple of weeks to share 5 minutes of what your experience with the Book of Mormon has been, I would like to get you on the schedule. And so contact me, talk with me afterwards, or send me an email and we'll get you on. I'd like to have a good variety of people and representation of good background, but we all have our own story and those stories are significant. And so whomever is willing, I would like to invite your participation. This evening, Rina and I are celebrating our 51st wedding anniversary.
Oh, yay. Happy
And
anniversary.
Thank you.
I think this probably is not the way that she wanted to celebrate it. But we had the Hawks celebrated scheduled for tonight, and they asked to move to next week. And so that left an opening for us to fall into, and she has bravely acceded to that desire of her spouse. And as so often in the 51 years, she has come through. Well, I initially had scheduled us for Love in the Book of Mormon, but now I put that one on the back burner to be offered at some later time because the Polynesian story that's parallel with the Book of Mormon is, I think, the far more compelling one. And so I'm in hopes you'll be able to enjoy that this evening as well. And I haven't seen Bill sign in yet, so Hamana, if we could have the prayer to get us started, I'd appreciate it.
Please pray with me. Dear God, thank you so much for blessing the people on this call today. Please allow us to feel your spirit, your warmth, and your love, and your peace. Please open our ears to hear your truth. Please open our minds to discern your lessons. And please open our hearts to be compassionate to your children and each of their stories. With each story brings new perspective and new insights. And the more that we attune our hearts to listening, the more we also grow as your children. In these things we pray. Amen.
Let me get the screen share up. And we should have, I think that's it. Oh, except it's the wrong place. All right, do we have the screen share so you're able to see?
Yes. Showing the family,
Yeah, we've got the Faura family here.
right?
And Rina, take it away.
Yorana oto, na roto I tiarofa, o to tato fatu o yetu metia, amene. O te purotu Rina Faura DeBarthe o yoa, e te ye tau hoa whaipopo o Paul DeBarthe. The Faura family of Papeete, one of many with rich heritage in the islands, has written history back to John Hawkins' oral history, 70 generations. My family in this 1959 photo shows Mama Tutu and Papa Abraham seated, and then youngest to oldest. From the left, my sister Angela, me, Ilona, me, Abraham, Etienne, Adrien, John, Diana, Felicie.
The DeBarthe Stubbard family. In 1987, pictures Joe and Enid, who met at Mateo Teepee, the Devil's Tower in Wyoming, near where both families had homesteaded. The photo that I was going to show at Nauvoo would have Ken Stubbard on it, and somehow I shifted, and so in this case, you're still going to see Ken Stubbard on the left, He is mother's youngest brother. And then I'm standing behind. My brother David is in front of me. Our dad Joe is center. Our brother Jerry is behind. Mom is wearing the red. Her sister Carol is behind her. Her mother Audrey Stubbert is behind Tehao. And Tehao Jean-Paul DeBarthe is our son, the little guy in the front. Let me get that picture to move. June 14, 1970. This beautiful young lady from Tahiti married the farm boy from Iowa. We were wed in the auditorium in Independence, Missouri, with Reed Holmes as the officiating minister. And Rina had accepted my invitation to build a home together in Zion, which you may consider a strange way to propose marriage, but it seems to have worked. The Book of Mormon commonality that we shared, we were both RLDS. John Hawkins, her ancestor, and Matthew Stubbert, my ancestor, were both members of the original church. We were warned by 3 church officials that cross-cultural marriages never work. And a couple of years ago, I had the chance to address one of those who acknowledged that, yes, he had said that and he still believed it. But he looked at us and said, our parents maybe made a difference. Well, the question then for us, how could the beautiful Tahitian lady possibly have a previous familial connection with the Iowa farm boy? And so she's going to be telling her story here in a moment. Her 23andMe, the quest to understand her genetics, shows that her genetics predominantly come from Southeast Asia. The natives of Formosa show possible connection with her ancestry, and this map shows migration to Fiji by 900 BC, to Samoa by 800 BC, and we have good information of settlement in the Marquesas by AD 100. So by that time, the Hawaiki dispersion may have taken place. There is a 500-year discrepancy being studied by the ethnographers and the archaeologists, but the tradition of Hawaiki as the mythical source land for the Society Islands, more particularly in Raiatea, as the birthplace of Polynesian culture, is demonstrated in its huge marae. And the marae here is on the island of Raiatea. It is Tainu'u. It is on the northwest coast of Raiatea, and it's pictured showing the above ground portion of a 4-meter coral slab abutting others of similar size, forming a huge box filled with coral. And then on the other side of the island, we have Tapu Tapuatea. The marae on this southeast side of Hawaii marks the cradle of Polynesian society. From here, through the pass marked by the trees, outriggers went to Hawaii and to New Zealand, spreading the seafaring culture. If we look at Polynesia on the map, you'll see Hawaii is 15 degrees north of the equator. New Zealand is way down south. Easter Island is way off to the east. The Society Islands with Tahiti in the center is located in the center of the triangle. Note that Micronesia and Melanesia would have been settled first as the people migrated out of Southeast Asia. And when you look at French Polynesia, I want you to note the 250-mile scale. That 250-mile scale you see would reach, if you go the length of the Tuamotu Islands, it's going to take 4 of those, about 1,000 miles. If you put it across, then you'll see that it is approximately the distance across the distance angling from southeast to northwest. The Society Islands with Tahiti in the center have, let's see, we have Bora Bora and Papeete and Raiatea that I just mentioned is in between those. And you'll see the Marquesas Islands are up in the northeast area. Australs are down south. Marquesas is where we're going to get some of the origin of Rina's traditions. And down south is where the missionaries first landed on the island of Tubuai. Tahiti is the land that Rina grew up on. The Faura clan established itself on Little Tahiti, the head of the turtle. And Te Whene, excuse me, I'm supposed to let Rina read here.
The Faura clan established itself on Little Tahiti. The Whenua Esherick was called the weed land on Little Tahiti because of much vegetation. They had everything they needed. The purau to make oars, tamanu or tow are provided for the double hull canoes, sap for the breadfruit-filled holes in the canoes. Their homes were made of coconut fronds. They used the young coconut for drinks, fibers for cordage. Every part of the coconut tree served a purpose. It was and is the tree of life. In Little Tahiti, waterfalls and rivers provided clean waters. Fruit in season, mangoes, papayas, bananas were in abundance. When it was time for fishing or to go to the valley or mountains to hunt wild pigs, the toa, the priest or high priest, regulated what species was primed for harvest. Which ones are taboos because they were out of season, and when one was able to go. All of the meetings with the chiefs and his warriors would be done on the marae, the religious center, their temple. Ancestral Fo'ura land on Tahiti Nui, distant mountains of Tahiti, connect to Little Tahiti with a narrow neck of land. A broad black sand beach with here accommodates, okay, the, I can't read
It
that.
accommodates a village.
Accommodate, I'm sorry, a village. Farther east, direct surface crashes against the mountain base. This is where the Spanish Bonachea in 1772 took 4 Tahitians to Peru to work. One died on the way. The Spanish then returned to take more to the Inca land. Okay. Hermit Raymond Liglis, of French background, living at the end of the road, drew a map on the back of cereal box detailing ancestral Fo'ura lands with Marat. He is known for being able to repair electric appliances, yet lives off the grid. The picture of Little Tahiti from the air will demonstrate how rough the terrain is. Earlier, before colonial contact, it was heavily populated. The Tuamotu Archipelago. So, with double hull canoes, they traveled and stopped, leaving 2 or 3 families at Ma'atea, Ra'iroa, Au'ura, Niau, Ti'ihau, Mataiva, Arutua, Apatai. Each household would have grandparents, parents, kids, workers, and slaves. They were vulnerable. During the cyclone season, October through March, there was particular jeopardy with the highest place on the motus at 6 feet above sea level. Cyclone waves offers a serious threat. By building their homes on the lagoon side of the motus, the reef made them safer from the big waves. Sometimes the water rose several feet above the reef. When the big wind struck, a person was secured to a coconut tree with a coconut rope to survive. They were on their own, independently surviving, foraging, and fishing for food and using coconuts for drinking water. To deal with people who may want to do them harm, a few warriors prepared to defend their kin. When someone or a group came by, usually the hospitality formality applied. They will have to give them something to eat, drink, and give them a place to stay. But sometimes the guests would take advantage of their generosity, and it might not be well with that person.
Let me interrupt just to highlight on the map. The Takume and Roroya are up here where I'm trying to circle up between the words Tuamotu and Archipelago. Takume and Roroya are here. Ana, oops, I hit that. Ana is another island we're going to talk about. It's down here. And the island that,
That we just talked.
let me back down here a bit. The island that the missionaries first landed on is Tubuai, down here in the Australs. And then we also will have reference to the Marquesas, which are up here, and Fatu Hiva is up in here. So you see, we're talking about a range of a couple thousand miles across this Pacific.
Okay, show Kokura.
Well, yeah, she's going to talk about Kaukura first, and Kaukura is this island right here, 30 miles long, 6 miles wide. That's the lagoon, and
Yeah.
with the coral on the outside, as you'll see in the picture.
All right. On the island of Kokura, our people received the individuals from neighboring islands who came by in a friendly manner. Were they looking for food because they were hungry? No one knew why visitors were coming. So you feed them. Then they come back. Sometimes they are looking for a companion. How do you know? Well, the people of Kokura spoke the Tahitian language. It's the Mihirua dialect. And these men from Anaa look like warriors, and they spoke a Pamutu dialect, completely different. They look around suspiciously, counting men, women, and children. They appear to be assessing the members, anticipating an invasion. So, in preparation of the feast, the workers and slaves place a mother pearl plate in front of the guests with a fish and a coconut with a very tiny hole so that they have to suck hard in order to get a drink. When their leader raised his coconut to drink, our warriors attacked them by cutting their throats with the sharpened mother of pearl plates. One escaped and rode back to his island to tell their leader, Parata, that our people attacked them. So very soon, a witch who lived in one of the motus, those are the smaller islet, swam to the main village to forewarn the people of Kokura that the enemy was coming. The people gathered together for prayers to invoke their god, Tutonu. These were pagans, and here is Tutonu. I don't know how you, by Paul. Tutonu has a sign, a black cloud over the island. After their prayer, Tutonu covered Kokura. Our ancestors could hear the drums of the warriors from Anaa and the noises they were making, but they were protected at that time. Then one day the cloud had disappeared and the enemy came back with vengeance. The clan member on the other islands were asked to go away in order to save their people. Rangiroa and Makatea decided that since they were not involved in the initial dispute, they did not want to be bothered. They won't hurt us, was their attitude. The Ana warriors came and killed all the men and left their wives and children. They could be their workers and slaves. With a population of 2,000 on this island, half of them warriors, Ana was in a position to dominate their neighbors. I'm sorry. The people of Makatea, this is another island, had to hide in the cliffs, but they did not have time to take enough food with them. So as they came down to get coconut, the warriors of Ana killed them. The warriors were numerous. The Kokura leaders decided to row to Tahiti to ask the King Pomare II to help them. He was a friend of Chief Faura. He agreed to fight Parata's warriors. In our tradition, typically the best fighter from each clan will be chosen to fight with the winner taking all. In other words, if your fighter loses, you become subject of the winner. The elders or sages of Kokura instructed Pomare II not to throw his spear too early because the warrior of Ana would jump in the air and would come down with his spear. It was a very good advice because that was exactly what happened. When the warrior of Parata jumped, the fatal blow got him in the air and he was killed. It was known in the Tahitian folklore as the Battle of Tarahoi. The thorn went back. Our ancestors thought that was the end of it and our people were safe. On the contrary, all across the Tuamotu, our people's lives were in danger. The warriors from Ana came with vengeance. They knocked down all the coconuts on the trees and killed where they found the people. They did not care who they hurt. They pillaged all across the Tuamotu, 250 miles to Raroia. The Varoa clan from Hivanui and the Marquesas had settled Raroia and Takume and had lived there for generations. The warriors of Ana arrived. These people were innocent, but it did not matter. The warriors were fierce and they wanted blood. Takume and Raroia were and are sister islands. The clan living there found themselves having to save their people. The women fought fiercely like warriors to save their families. After these warriors destroyed their coconut trees, their tree of life, Marire, one of my sisters, volunteered to give himself as a sacrifice for his people. He wanted the warriors to stop the killing. He hoped for peace, but knew that they could just offer his soul to the gods. They could kill him and eat him. These were cannibals. Only the warriors would eat the human flesh and offer the soul of man to their gods. But in spite of the probable end of his life, the young man Marire took his entourage to meet the Ana people on their land. Instead of killing him, he was given in marriage to a woman of Ana, making an alliance between Ana and Raroia and the interconnected clans. Because of Marire, many islands included, our clan members' lives were spared. His motivation was his love first of all for his family, and second for the other people who were innocent and those who caused the problems. I found him as a man of peace. His daughter would marry my maternal grandma Coma's grandfather from Rapa Nui, Easter Island. His name is Hawa. The Hawa family name continues on our family trees. Marire made an alliance with the enemy, became one of them. To this day, there were no more battles and wars. In addition, he taught the Tahitian language to the leaders of Anaa. Fatonga, Enigma. In his Pilgrims of the Pacific, 1974, 92, Butterworth presents a legend shared by an aged Catholic gentleman named Paea. Fatonga arrived on Raroia from Hivanui in the Marquesas. To Fatonga was born a son by the name of Tiki, who it is said was a beautiful child with a different skin pigmentation than the other inhabitants had. Because of jealousy, the other youths on the island murdered Tiki while they were on a fishing trip between the islands of Raroia and Takume. When Tiki did not return from the fishing trip, his father Fatonga became alarmed. It was a long while before he was told that what had happened to his son. But upon hearing the tragic news, he rode out in the moonlight in the spot where his son had been murdered. There were a dozen canoes filled with islanders in pursuit, anxious to see what the old man would do. When Fatonga reached the place pointed out to him by a friend, he did not react violently as they had expected, but stood up in his canoe, slowly raised his hand heavenward, and chanted, "E tangata hoki au, no wharire a mai, e nuku hoki at no te atua." I am a man of, and we believe it's Galilee, a nation of God. Fatonga wept constantly and would not be comforted because of the loss of his son Tiki. In an effort to console him, the inhabitants began to make images of Tiki in stone and wood wherever Fatonga's influence reached. A group of
people from the north, Sweden and Norway, was fascinated with the idea that Polynesia was populated by the people from South America, from Peru. And so Tiki Veracocha inspired them, and they called their expedition the Kon-Tiki. They made preparations in Sweden and proceeded to get some help from the United States. They flew to Peru, obtained basalt logs, and then constructed a raft. The crew showed up, a cook, photographer, steward, navigator, radio man, and a parrot, and they embarked with fanfare. After being on the water for some months, they had problems with the waterlogged logs, and so there were some nervous moments before they finally found land in Polynesia. The raft ended on the reef in Raroia. After being there for 2 days, someone on the island noticed a light on one of the motus and decided to check on it, and the crew of the Kon-Tiki were happy to be found. So from there, they were able to meet the people of a village, and they were well received. Bent Danielson taught the natives a tune from his country, and the natives wrote the words in Tahitian about their arrival on Raroia and how they were helped. We'll sing that in a moment. Rina?
We still sing that song with the church people anywhere. So Raroia was given a new name, the Kon-Tiki Island. That was in 1947. The Kon-Tiki expedition showed that rafting from South America to the Tuamotu was possible. Our Polynesian people knew that because our ancestors had explored the whole Pacific. It was our home. We knew its boundaries. Thor Heyerdahl saw the connection between sweet potato in Peru called kuman and the sweet potatoes in Polynesia called umara, and was right to connect them. He may have been wrong in the direction of his migration, but he reaffirmed contact between the Polynesians and Americas.
Thor Heyerdahl expedition ended at Raroya, rafting from Peru April 28 through August 7 of 1947. The raft was named Kontiki after the Inca god Viracocha, for whom Kontiki was said to be an old name. Archaeological, linguistic, cultural, and genetic evidence tends to support a Western origin from islands of the Southeast Asia for Polynesians. Using these sophisticated multi-hull sailing technologies and navigation techniques during the Austronesian expansion. However, there is evidence of some genetic flow from South America to Easter Island and other islands of Polynesia.
Tera imate It's your turn. You continue.
In 1843, May of 1843, 4 missionaries were sent by Joseph Smith Jr. from Nauvoo, Illinois, to go to the Isles of the Sea. They left Nauvoo for Massachusetts to embark on the Timoleon. They were intending to go to the Hawaiian Islands, but instead the boat took them toward Tahiti. They had to shift their plans quickly, but they agreed to go to Tahiti. And on board, they met Mr. and Mrs. Seth Lincoln, Priscilla, and the maid Rovina. Knowlton Hanks' health did not do well, and so they buried him at sea close to Africa. They then arrived on the island of Tubuai, and Addison Pratt decided to stay there and started the Lord's work on that island in the Australs. Benjamin Gerard and Noah Rogers and the rest continued the voyage to Tahiti as planned. After clearance from the French, they went looking for a place to live and a place to meet for church. The Lincolns and Rovina were baptized, and Seth was ordained an elder and was put in charge of the mission in Papeete.
Great.
There were 2 English men, John Hawkins and his friend William Jefferson, who helped them and became interested in hearing what the Americans would share about the gospel, and they preferred it to what they heard from the English and the French missionaries. John was baptized and ordained elder by Benjamin Gerard. He knew the Tahitian language and had been living in Tahiti for a couple of years. Benjamin found it difficult in trying to convert the people in Tahiti. The English missionaries did not want them to take their converts, And so he decided to go to the Tuamotus, and Noah Rogers went to the islands under the wind, the Leeward Islands. That would be the Raiatea, Bora Bora, and so on. But he found that the English missionaries had sent words there for people not to accept him. So he had few converts, and shortly, at about a year, he went home to the United States to join the group going to Utah. He was the first of our missionaries to circumnavigate the world in the process of his service. However, Benjamin Gerard got on one of the schooners and headed for the dangerous islands, the Tuamotu atolls. There were no mountains, water was scarce, so was everything else. One could easily starve to death there. When the schooner approached the island of Ana, Benjamin decided to get off, even though the captain would be willing to wait for him. He said, "Don't stay there for the night, it's not safe, it's dangerous." Well, he waved at the captain to go on, and his description of his arrival in his autobiography is scary. He said it was like a legion of demons. His journal, as a matter of fact, records that after he'd been canoed to shore, quote, "I was the next minute surrounded by some 200 or 300 natives of both sexes, of all ages, naked, half naked, clad, hooting, hallooing, laughing, and jabbering like a legion of evil spirits. They looked to me wild and savage, and hearing the frightful savage noises they made, and not being able to understand a word they said, I really did not know but what I had become a victim for sacrifice in very deed," unquote. Then Gerard discovered the leaders spoke some Tahitian and were interested in the white man's religion. Where others in the islands had received missionaries, none had been willing to come to Ana until Gerard braved the savage reputation and landed. In 3 months, he baptized 620 converts and organized 5 branches of the church. He dared to burn the idols on the marae and demonstrated that their power did not harm him. He explained that the kindness and peace were to replace hatred, savagery, jealousy, and evil in their lives.
How timely it was. I think God had help so that when Benjamin arrived, he will get assistance. God works in mysterious ways. Marire was intentionally brought into this group of people because that was a greater cause, the evangelization of the people of the Isles, and they needed a common language. It facilitated Benjamin's job. He was able to build a boat with Addison Pratt so they could travel from island to island, and he spread the good work in 15 islands. That included out 10 islands for my family. His wife in Nauvoo had divorced him for abandonment. He married Tearo from Tuvoy, and she bore Sophronia and then died on her way back home on the boat. He then married a daughter of the chief of Nahina, who bore him 2 sons. People on Ana who were related to our family on other islands were anxious to spread the gospel message, and it spread rapidly. Unfortunately, the French expelled all the foreign missionaries in 1852, and Gruard and his wife, Nahina, and their 3 children left for California.
The Hagoth Enigma. Alma 63, 4 through 9 says, "And it came to pass that in the 37th year of the reign of judges, there was a large company of men, even to the amount of 5,400 men, with their wives and their children, departed out of the land of Zarahemla into the land which was northward. And it came to pass that Hagoth, he being an exceedingly curious man, therefore he went forth and built himself an exceedingly large ship on the borders of the land bountiful by the land desolation, and launched it forth into the West Sea by the narrow neck which led into the land northward. And behold, there were many of the Nephites who did enter therein and did sail forth with much provisions, and also many women and children. And they took their course northward, and thus ended the 37th year. In the 38th year, this man built other ships, and the first ship did also return, and many more people did enter into it, and they took much provisions and set out again to the land northward. It came to pass they were never heard of more. and we suppose they were drowned in the depths of the sea. And it came to pass that one other ship did also sail forth, and whether she did go, we do not know. It came to pass that in this year there were many people who went forth into the land northward, and thus ended the 38th year.
Pilgrims of the Pacific, F. Edward Butterworth, one of our beloved missionaries, his wife Lily Ray, and their family served among us the Mautanito, the saints, for 15 years. He served as mission president for the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in French Polynesia, and we benefited from his ministry, and he called on my father to assist him when they went to visit the members. He was not only interested in our learning about the gospel, but he was interested in our culture. He was a member of the executive committee of Society for Archaeological Research for the RLDS Church. He consulted with many of the trusted leaders in their respective islands, either as government officials and or pastors in our church. He called on my papa on many occasions to assist him in his travels to people's homes. Before the 1962 World Conference, he invited my papa to go to the US, and he wanted him to have a round trip ticket from Tahiti to LA, and he took care of the rest when he got there. On April the 6th, 1962, my mom received a telegram that said, "I'm being called to serve the church." My mom asked us what we thought. We all affirmed. The response from my mom was very short, mama, meaning yes, mom. Edward got acquainted with many important people in Tahiti. To name a few:
Ben Danielson from the Kontiki expedition was an anthropologist who wrote many books, especially about Roroya. Here he is pictured with his adopted son, Robert, who married Rina's niece, Efara. He also then went to see Mr. Frank Stimson, a linguist friend to whom he had given a Book of Mormon. Mr. Stimson said he thought that he had found a cultural connection to the Book of Mormon. He noted that in the Tuamotu dialect, words with a G often were translated T. Therefore, Hagoth might be translated Hatota. Further, Hatota, as it moved through the islands, had been modified to Fatonga.
Tonga.
In his Pilgrims of the Pacific, 1974, 91 and following, Butterworth relates his conversation with Mr. Stimson. Butterworth found that the F and the H are interchangeable among the Tuamotu. The G would become a T since the NG sound from the Tuamotu is dropped in modern Tahitian. Therefore, Fatonga becomes Hatota, Tahitianizing Hagoth. Fatonga arrived on Roroya from Hivanui in the Marquesas. He had a son, Tiki, who was killed on a fishing trip. His father announced himself as a man from Fa'area, a nation of God, and afterward left Roroya. Tiki's marking his travels thereafter. To have support from Mr. Stimson was a most encouraging development for Ed Butterworth. The boat building skill of
Benjamin grew up.
there we go. The boat building skill of Benjamin Gerard created an American fishing style ship to facilitate travel among the islands. Its two-deep keel hit the reef in Tahiti, and he learned the value of the Polynesian double-hulled craft assembled with no metal and with a shallow draft. While wrecked, Gerard found that John Hawkins had been arrested by the Tahitians because they had thought he had shifted allegiance to the French. He tried to get a ride on a French vessel. They shot at him. He shot back and wounded a Frenchman. The Tahitians arrested him and tied him to a pole and put him in a prison. He prayed for a sick baby, and God had healed it. Other mothers brought their children to be healed, and he reached his hands through the bars to bless them. He then escaped. The French were going to hang him, but ultimately they were convinced of that his action was self-defense, and his ministry was just beginning. And when those two were joined by Addison Pratt in Papeete, They were assured the gospel work was being blessed. Hawkins survived, and his daughter married Moe Faura, father of Faura Faura, and grandfather of Abraham Faura, who is Rina's father. Now then, this is a picture of Frank Gerard. When Benjamin Gerard moved to California, his wife was not happy there. She returned to the islands with the two children and left Frank with his father. Frank was raised by the Pratt family in Utah and at a young age began driving mules across the mountains to California and Oregon. The story that he rode for the Pony Express does not add up, or he was only 11 years old when he was carrying the mail, but he was apparently carrying mail when he was captured between Musselshell and Fort Hall. That puts him probably in eastern Oregon by a band of the Sioux. He was dark complected and like the Sioux, and he bravely grabbed a warrior under each arm to shield himself from their blows and spent then 6 years among the Sioux as the grabber, also known by the name Sitting Bull gave him, Standing Bear. He became blood brothers with Crazy Horse. And so here's the monument to Crazy Horse. And was known as a fine hunter. He became the chief scout then for General Crook and was cited as being more valuable than a third of Crook's command. On one occasion, he's recorded to have ridden 101 miles on 6 horses in 4 hours to deliver an urgent message. While some of the stories about him were exaggerated, especially the one in a California newspaper about his torture and death that was read by his father, he led a colorful life. He had defected from the Sioux to the whites and was rejected by the Sioux and their friends on that basis. He looked like a native and was feared by the whites. And we know, what here did I get? Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, there's still these Crazy Horse monument behind the lady there that is accepted as a grandmother among the Sioux. He looked like a native, was feared by the whites. He essentially fell in the crack between human and other with his happiest years among the Sioux. After the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890, Frank Gerard played a significant role in the settlement of issues. Unfortunately, there have been few reparations for the natives whose lands and lifestyles have been through the policies and annihilation, assimilation, and to a small extent, accommodation. And if you bring me back to this, I'll explain more about that. The government says there are 150 people buried here. The Lakota indicate 300, but that rectangular pit is the burial site on top of the hill overlooking the Wounded Knee battle site. When we emphasize our differences rather than our commonalities, we jeopardize peace and happiness. This is one significant lesson from Polynesia and the Book of Mormon. The Life and Adventures of Frank Gerard, published in the Time Life Classics of the Old West, was reprinted from the 1894 original in 1982. And Joe DeBarthe, the author, spent 1887 through 91 making friends with and acquiring the story of Frank Gerard. Frank had 800 years of Sioux history documented in his house that burned at Fort McKinney. Joe arranged for the father and son to meet each other again in Cheyenne in 1893 after nearly 40 years of being apart, and with Benjamin mistakenly informed that his son was dead. Joe's son, Don, had 4 children, homesteading in Wyoming. The oldest, Joe, lived on until 2007 on his farm near Lamoni, Iowa. And so now we come to a summation. Polynesian mythology includes Hatota and Fatonga. Both may be translations of Agoth. The story of Tiki being murdered at Roroya and his father traveling Polynesia leaving monuments to him explains multiple Tikis around the islands. A possible tie to Tiki Viracocha would associate the Polynesians with the Inca. Another story indicates Tiki and Hina were the first Polynesians. The Book of Mormon and the Polynesian story show a dysfunctional family growing, warring, and performing crimes against humanity. And then, with the Christian message, or sometimes even without that, learning to live together in peace. Paul and Rina married, and that later discovered that her ancestor, John Hawkins, had been baptized by and was best friends with Benjamin Gerard, whose son Frank was the subject of DeBarthe's classic of the Old West. Cross-cultural marriages never work, we were told, but the photo of our family is some evidence to the contrary. And the next generation, then, yeah, here's the next generation, our grandkids with us in Hawaii. It is of interest to note what 1 Nephi 3, 187 and following says, and this is hundreds of years before Maudere. And blessed are they which shall seek to bring forth my Zion at that day, for they shall have the gift and power of the Holy Ghost. And if they endure unto the end, they shall be lifted up to the last day and shall be saved in the everlasting kingdom of the Lamb. Yea, whoso shall publish peace, that shall publish tidings of great joy. How beautiful upon the mountains shall they be. We are open to your questions.
Thank you, Rina and Paul, for sharing with us tonight. You know, our family, excuse me, our family has shared many things together. And I was thinking about Henry coming and staying with us. And I believe he told me that Tahiti was maybe 90 miles. Is that correct?
Well, you could drive around the whole island in about 3.5 hours.
Well, if
Okay, so well, I know he said it was smaller. And one of the things we did, we took 4 teenagers on a camping 5,000-mile trip, camping all the way. And he was with us. And so we shared many good memories, and I appreciate so much the gifts he offered to our family. And there's something else I'd like to share. Because of the connection with Henry, one day I was home caring for my mother-in-law because she was ill. And I had heard that there was a Tahitian in the hospital, St. Luke's, a gentleman, didn't know him, but I kept having this feeling, you need to go to the hospital and see this Tahitian. And it became so strong that I went, which was no easy task because St. Luke's Hospital is huge and I was wandering around there by myself. And I found him and we had this wonderful spirit moment there. And I didn't know him and he didn't know me, but I know that that was a holy whisper that God sent me there that day. And I'm ever so grateful for your family, your children even being involved in our life. Thank you both.
Well, thank you. It was rather unique to have Henri showing up, and I was working and Rina was at home with the little girls, and to be able to let Henri go with your family was a real blessing and opportunity for him.
I really appreciate it because he was trying to learn English, and I knew that if he were with me, we'd be speaking French, and so it would not help him.
We taught him English, probably the wrong English.
Yeah, that's
So
my
it was
son.
great to have him go.
They taught him to say, "You turkey."
I was always fascinated with the idea of growing up on an island or somewhere near the ocean. So naturally, I was born in Kansas.
Well, you got the Kansas River here, Monty. That's an interesting beach. The water is only a little bit different color.
Oh, Rhoda has a question. Go ahead, Rhoda.
Okay. Brother Butterworth came to Rich Hill several times and brought stories from Tahiti. And he preached on the people down there and how warm and inviting they were, and that he was so excited they had accepted Christ and they were forming churches there. So I remember him talking about the Polynesian people. Thank you so much.
I also was in love with the Polynesian people and probably even Rena before we actually knew each other, because Brother Butterworth was in our district an awful lot and showed pictures after he had come back, and also Brother Breckenridge. And then when I went to the first camp that I ever went to, which I mentioned that Ralph Williston that was there last year, Cheryl Butterworth and Carol Breckenridge were my friends at that camp. In fact, Carol Breckenridge and I were tent mates for the next 3 years because we got along so well. So I heard a lot of stories and fell in love with those pictures that Brother Butterworth brought back of the kids playing with sharks on the beach and all this. And one of those kids was Rena. So then when Rena and I landed at Shawnee Drive together, each of us with a little girl, a little bit about a year's different in age, it was interesting to hear the stories and her saying, I was in those pictures. And so it felt like it was meeting a fellow church member, that we really were a worldwide church. And maybe we're a little too small if the missionaries go clear around the world and bring you back pictures of people that land in your congregation. Oh, and beautiful orchids. Did you order them for Rena, or did the kids give them to you?
We exchanged hays at our wedding, and at that time it cost us $30 to get hay, the two flower hays shipped in from Hawaii. Now, this time it takes $84 to do the same thing.
And I thank you so much. For the hay.
That's long too.
And I thank you so much for the hay you brought to my mother's memorial service. She would have been she would have been so pleased.
Yeah.
The hay,
Very special lady.
the hay is a
Yeah.
symbol of love, and it's given with a kiss on both cheeks. And it then stays, and this particular type of hay has some fragrant flowers along with the orchids. And so it makes it that much more pleasant. I guess after you stick together this many years, it begins to smell the same anyway, so. The fragrance, the fragrance counts in our favor.
Wanda has something she wants to say. Go ahead, Wanda.
I had the privilege of going to Tahiti with Rina and Paul and Enid and Joe. No, not Joe. He didn't go. Enid and her friend Rebecca. And we traveled that whole island one day. Yeah. And on the way back, we heard the music all the way because Rina's brother and some other people were on the ukuleles all day. And we had hardly any room for their arms because they had to hold the ukuleles up like this because everyone was crowded in the back of that church bus. But we heard that music all the way home, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, we got on the plane to leave. And in the meantime, I should tell you that they were the most generous people I've ever met. And so we got on the plane and came home. We flew over Kansas City when the floods were there, really bad. We landed and we got off the plane, and Enid said to me, it was so nice of those Tahitians, the pilot, to play that Tahitian music all the way home on the airplane. And I said, did you hear it too? And she said, yes. I said, that was the Tahitians singing us home because there was no radio playing the Tahitian music. So we had ceremony. I mean, we had the music ringing in our ears from hearing it all day long. And we were still hearing it when we got off the plane because it was so beautiful. But anyway, we had a wonderful time and we met wonderful people everywhere.
Thank you, Aunt Wanda.
And we were considered royalty because we were Rina's aunt and uncle.
I would like to share a tribute myself, if I may. because the first time, the only time we've ever reached anniversary 51. We've been together now, married 51 years, through a great deal of laughter and quite a few tears. Blessed by opposition and by some good support, our cross-cultural marriage, predicted to fail, is still too short. For I love you and want to be with you as long as breath shall last. Sharing each our call to minister, loving the present, the future, and the past. Pleasure of seeing our children grown, yet close, our next of kin, with their offspring growing, a new generation about to begin, compounded by the good words they say in reference to our ways, blesses us in reflections of our graying days. When in Spanish class, I heard your beautiful song, Tiare, it was an invitation, a request where I longed to belong. A farm boy from Iowa, I learned later that Iowa is where God lives. In Tahitian, Iowa is the place of God, where God dwells. Ask you promptly to go to church. A slightly strange date, you could ask. What gives? You rode in the back seat. Not a date with prospects to enhance. But then, as I walked you back to the dorm, you kindly gave me another chance, and I blew it. I blew it really good this time. Introducing you to the best people in my life, my mom and my dad, not realizing that to you, that was a proposal for marriage, not an early date to make you glad. And yet, somehow, in spite of my clumsiness on my part, you chose to take my hand and chose, like Ruth, to love my people, my culture, to love me and my homeland. Tonight, you share again at church on Zoom, much more publicly than you prefer, sharing the story of your people in parables of history that in the islands did occur. And your loving character again comes through, so other people can appreciate the message your father gave to you. His last message to you as you departed, one where you'd find challenge but rely upon. Go to Zion for us, your grandma said. Your father said, daughter, love the people of Zion. Some have told you that your skin disqualifies. They tried to bring your destiny to tears, but your heart prevails. Your love wins all. Thank you for loving me these 51 years.
Thank you, Paul. That was really nice. Appreciate that.
That was very nice.
Congratulations, you guys, on 51 years. That's awesome.
Oh, thank
Happy
you.
anniversary.
Thank you.
Yes, happy anniversary.
Yeah, you
God
guys,
bless you.
we just celebrated 49.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
We're so glad
Singing
up with you.
Hey, Paul, you mentioned that I have the Kansas River. Well, that brought to mind for a brief time I did live on an island during the 51 flood.
All right. Well, the opportunity for you to ask questions and put Rina on the spot now is a rare opportunity. And so, you see what happened when I introduced to my parents. My mom and I got to ask a whole bunch of questions, and she broke out in the hives and had to go see the doctor. And so, since this is somewhat of a replay of that, then here's your chance.
Hey, Paul, just a quick question. Am I supposed to continue recording till we quit, or do I stop the recording now?
This would be the time to stop and then start a new recording,
No, right. Oh,
because Robert commonly plays the first hour, and then
Again. Thank you.
all right.
Rena, some of the
Yes.
stories that you've told me have been about your grandmother or great grandmother diving under the sea and some forms of worship, and as well as some of the storms and some of the things that you felt that your family felt like was God inspired. Do you feel comfortable sharing any of those things about the sea or the storms?
She's asking about your grandmother going down in the sea to pray for people.
Oh,
If you're comfortable.
yeah. My grandma is someone that prays a lot. That she found that going down in the ocean and staying down in the ocean and praying is the best place for her. Where you see, when you are on the island, because it's not very big, you could go around the island. You know, these are the atoll, the one that I was talking about. They might be, how would you say, Paul? You might go all around the island, like maybe in 45 minutes, and you got the whole island. And so it's so busy. And she had a lot of children. My grandma had 14 kids.
Wow.
And so the place that you could pray, where you don't have any noise, is in the ocean. So you dive and you stay there and you pray, and you need some air, you come up, and then you go back down and you pray some more. And so sometime though, because she's a good diver, you see, some divers could stay underwater. These are pearl divers I'm talking about. They could go as long as 3 minutes sometimes, holding their breath. But they are diving and no equipment other than just the goggles. But they're going after pearls. And somebody is up there helping them because they could pull on there are two a rope. One is to pull them out, and the other one is for the pearls. But my grandma, because she dives a lot and does that a lot, so she's able to stay down very long for a long time.
And she would pray for people and
Yet for healing for people, and so that's something she does.
well, and so she got kicked out of the church for it.
Well, that's I don't know if some of you got hold of the book, The Roots of the Organization, and you will read in it where some people were kicked out of the church. And my grandmother was one of those, because they felt that that kind of praying is going like doing the like with the devil or something. And I think in those days there were some people that were practicing the old, because there is the pagan religion. Our people were pagans. You saw our statue, the one that Paul was standing by. That's a statue for that island. And you heard about Tutono in Moana, the movie of Moana, for the little girl Moana. Tutono is that God, and so our people believe in Tutono, and they pray to Tutono. My grandma was with these people that felt like they wanted to pray for different people who are sick and so forth, and there were other people from outside that came and joined the group. And my understanding is they were mixing what is the white people's God, if you will, with the ancient way of believing. And I think that was the problem that got them in trouble. But their thinking were that they wanted to have the same experience as Joseph Smith Jr. that he went into the woods and prayed. But some people abuse that. And that's what I tried to understand. I asked my dad about that. And I said, why, you know, our grandma was kicked out of the church. And said, because she was in this group doing the prayer, and a lot of success where, you know, people were healed. And my, you know, my dad just said they had to be kicked out of the church. They came, it was from here, from the, you know, they sent, forgot his name. He's one of the Smith. He went back down to Tahiti and made it so everybody that was in that group, there were 50 of them, had to be rebaptized. And my grandma loved the church so much that she was rebaptized. And so, but she is someone who prayed. And I just,
One of the
I don't know.
conflicts that
Okay.
these people ran into, you see, they had a cannibalistic background in which you would eat the body of the victim and accept just the warriors. But the power of the soul then would be incorporated into the person that consumed. And the Christian missionaries came and they said, no, you can't do that. You're supposed to eat and drink the blood of God.
They don't understand that at all.
The idea of
how can you eat your God and drink his blood? And that is the confusion with the Polynesian when you come and you tell them, don't do what you're doing, but do what we're doing. And so, my goodness, we never eat our God and we never drink his blood. But they are Christian and they do that. They shifted their way of thinking.
My therapist, because of my breathing problems, he's having me, and I've been doing other things so that I don't have to wear oxygen all the time, and it's helping. And he's having me read a book now called Breathe, and it's some of the newest information. And it talks about that when you learn to step out of your current things, that you truly can. And there are many cases, they say, of people who go into, I'm going to call it an altered state of meditation, and do stay underwater 15 and 20 and 30 minutes. Like your grandmother, I think you told me one time that she could dive for at least 10 or 15 minutes. And that's not something you say lightly to somebody. But I found out in this book that everything you and I had talked about when we were both really young was very probably true, because your grandmother was in a deep meditative state between her and God, and she did not need as much oxygen.
Paul Humana's added a couple things. She's fascinated by the bravery of the missionaries starting their adventure from Nauvoo and going to the island of cannibals in Ana, and how great God's grace extends to everyone, including warriors, that you have to beware of those who pray underwater.
Yeah.
Makes me think I ought to wear my peace and love t-shirt so I won't be mistaken for a warrior.
Yeah. Especially grandmas that pray underwater. Boy, what's up with that?
Yeah.
Notice there's a very strong connection to our scripture for this week, where we're talking about David and Goliath. And if you look at the story of David and Goliath, we commonly just tell that story from the vantage point of David, but it's interesting and valuable, I think, to look at that from Goliath's vantage point. When Marere went to Ana, clearly he was the David up against the Goliath, but rather than eating him, they married him to one of their women and converted.
Yeah, you see, when he came, I think he came with his, you know, like he had the priest with him, and he is a royal, you know, they are nobility on both clans. And so they come with power. And so these people are looking, yeah, are we going to eat you? I think we better be friends. And the alliance actually made it so they able to go to Raroya and Takume, and then even in outside of the family, we have 8 islands where we have property, so they could come and be part of that. And so it kind of enlarged your, you have more people. And that's why I was so excited when they talk about Benjamin Gruard going to those different islands, where they're going to people who are families.
Yeah.
And so it was easy to, baptize them. There's so many of them. And so it kind of like 10 right at the very beginning. When he got there, we got 2 from Raroya and Tokume, 8 from the other group. He had to go to 5 more, and you got it. And it's easy if you know the people.
Paul, do you remember George Gates?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we called him Papa George in my family. He was so proud of the fact that he was related to Butterworth. And so he gave me the first book he'd written, and which was signed by him. And that's always been a special thing for me because he was so proud that he was related to him.
George Gates was your grandpa?
He was my step grandpa. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. See, he lost his wife through cancer. My grandma lost my grandpa when I was 8 with a heart attack, and they met up later in life through the mail with the because she was just writing to servicemen in the army. I mean, in the service, because they did that kind of thing back then. They said, write to all the servicemen. And she didn't know he was her age until somebody in the congregation said, well, we know him. He'd be perfect for you. So then she was embarrassed, but they ended up, he asked her to come over and visit because he was in Germany with the Red Cross. He'd been always in the Red Cross. And so they got to really meet for the first time and fell in love, and he started the rest of that story.
As in our case, embarrassment may be a good basis for a good relationship.
So then Mabel was your grandmother?
What?
Mabel was your grandmother?
No, Catherine Wilder Gates was my grandmother.
Oh, okay.
George's first wife died of cancer.
Okay.
When they were in Lincoln, Nebraska. He's originally from Maine.
So I was going to comment on the story of Marere, where there is the personal sacrifice of willingness to say, let's end the wars, and I will sacrifice myself to just end it for future wars. And it strikes me as very Book of Mormon. How do you say like Book of Mormon? But however grammatically that's supposed to be phrased. But I think that when you have those similarities in stories and traditions, where I think we can find an awful lot of wars in our histories across the globe. And I think you can find a lot of stories of people who get sick of the wars. And so I find it very fascinating that we can see lots of examples of someone drawing the line and saying, just no more. It will end with me. Sorry, that was not a question, but if you want to elaborate more on that, go right ahead.
You did.
Thank you, Hamona. I think that that is quite correct, and in the anthropological studies, this is a reoccurring theme, and it shows up in the mythologies of many cultures, and that person who offers themselves as a sacrifice sometimes is eaten. We have, particularly in Papua New Guinea, that has happened. And the idea that a person would give their lives and then potentially it still becomes a transformative moment, so that the people recognize maybe that was a mistake and they should try to pay attention to what he said, to hear the word. The nature of the word that we spread, the word that we share, whether it's with our actions or our vocabulary, the nature of the story that we tell, the story of our lives, is, I think, one of those valuable things that's why I'm asking for people to share their testimony on July 5, because everybody's story has a merit for us to benefit from. And we all are strengthened, I think, by sharing those stories.
Reminds me of the anti-Nephi Lehis.
Yeah.
I said it reminds me of the anti-Nephi Lehis. Where they lay down their lives rather than take up arms against their brethren.
Yeah.
Another profound message.
Rina,
Yes.
this is Ron Edwards.
Yes.
Did I see tonight where you lived in Tahiti, or spent some time in Tahiti?
Yeah. In Tahiti. Yes.
Yeah, she was born there.
I was born there.
Born there.
Yes.
Are you acquainted with the Richmond family?
Yes. Related to a lot of them.
Tate Hal and Benny, who passed away in 2009.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are related to them, actually. They are all from those islands that I was talking about. Kokura, they're from there.
Right.
Their ancestors are from there. You see, our family is spread in all those 8 islands. And so we concentrated right there in Kokura, my family, and so is the Richmond.
Yes.
Sonny Richmond, they married into our family, and so that's how we related.
Well, they married into our family too.
Oh.
Their daughter Kathy is our daughter-in-law.
Oh yeah.
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 So I haven't made it over there, but my wife has been over there, and of course they have that business of the harvesting the black pearls.
Yes.
And of course Benny had that shipping business, but I think when he passed away, I think that probably went by the wayside. But and of course Tate Hal comes back for each of the world conferences.
She is from Kokura too.
Yeah, well that's
all these people you're talking about. We are related somehow. Billy, Tate Hal is a Billy. My step-grandfather is a Billy. It's French connection.
Right, French.
There is an American in there. They're German, like in my mom's side, German. They have English, and it's all mixed up. And they have Spaniards in my family, but a lot of those people you were talking about, they were on the island of Kokura. And they might have some the relative on the other island because we all connected.
Yeah, right.
You saw the picture of her brothers and sisters. Her oldest sister married a Frenchman. The next one married a...
It's Tahitian, but he has an Indian background.
Yeah, Indian background.
From India.
She had one that married a German, one to a Fijian,
Chinese.
One to a Chinese, one from the Austral Islands, and then
from Tupua, where the first mission started.
And then, of course, one married the crazy American. And so to get this family together is a fascinating because they're just
Plan.
It's a delightful bunch, and our kids are
Okay.
talented and delight to get to know each other. And so it's really a little bit of a touch of Zion, I think, to be able to see the expansion of the Falweta family into the rest of the world.
Yeah, small world.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Well, I really appreciate that information tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You know, I was concerned because you see, I am from Tahiti originally. I only go visit those islands. My mom was born in one of those islands, Apatay. My dad is from Tahiti, but my grandparents are from those islands. And so they tell me, my mom said, I don't think you're gonna survive over there, Rina. You're too particular. But just imagine, okay? You go there and there's no water. It only rains maybe 2 weeks out of a month.
Oh
So you
my.
gotta get all your water when it rains. You gather your water. But in those days, they did not have containers for their water. And so what you do, you dig a hole, and when it rains, and it's filled half with what my mom would say, half ocean and seawater and the water. That's what you use to wash your clothes, take a bath with. And it's itchy if you don't do the right thing. And my mom said, people don't know that when you take your shower, you have to dry it real quick, because there the salt is really, I mean, you can have it on your skin. So there is a lot of things they do that you and I don't know. Fishing, for example, they know all kinds of things. For example, my brother, who is a captain, he goes from island to island, pick up people and then go and return back to Tahiti. He would tell us that that some of those people on those islands, they are survivors. They are really strong people, you know what I mean? And what I'm talking about, when they go fishing, they know fish. They know that if you catch one fish and you put it down, that dead fish, you put it down, all the other fishes like it will come around it. And you just pick it, the one, but it had to be that certain fish. So those people knows, I don't know that. But my brother would say, oh yeah, if you want that fish, you catch that fish and then you just drop it into the water, and all the other fishes like it will come around it. And the only thing you do is just pick it up, put it in your, and then they have different things that they know that, he would talk about it and I just go, oh yeah, I would never know that, but these people do.
We spent a week with Rina's oldest brother, John, and Tabana on the island of Kaukura. John had his own fish corral, which means that he'd open it up in the nighttime. So when the
fish would come in,
fish could come in, and the
then
water would be high enough. And then in the morning, he'd go out and look over the fish that were in his corral and decide who he wanted for breakfast. We were there for a week and only had the same kind of fish twice. And every meal, we're getting different kinds of fish, everything that
fix it in different ways.
Some that were almost like beefsteak, and some that were so light that they'd melt in your mouth, like a French pastry. Just an amazing assortment of different fishes and different preparations that Tamana prepared. I found it delightful.
Paul, Jay, and Nancy Huffman left a message. They said, thank you so much for all your time and research, for sharing your personal history with us, including church history and connection of the Book of Mormon. We wish you a happy anniversary. You're so sweet, and we loved your music. Thank you, Jay and Nancy.
So you touched on it just a little bit, but the Disney movie of Moana has a lot of actual relevance to the island culture, and you kind of tied it together with the god of Kaukura Tutonu, as far as Maui and Maui having the similarities.
Part of it. That is so true. I wanted to just not play the role, but our pagan religion, my ancestors' pagan religion traces themselves to the gods. You become a god. That's something that we don't believe, but the Polynesian do. And that's why we have what they call ancestor worship. We talk about our ancestors. And it's interesting because they will, like Paul was, and I mentioned that we have 70 generations. And my grandma memorized our genealogy. I have a book. She memorized it and taught to 2 of her daughters. But those 2 daughters, I'm so grateful to them. They wrote it down. My grandma only remember it, and she does not remember the date. You see, they did not have that, but they will remember who the parents were, who the kids were. And so she just goes down. And my dad gave me that gift. He wrote it down because his sisters, put it together. And I, until I read the book by Raroya, by Ben Danielson, that's when I saw that my grandma's cousin gave the rest of it to Ben Danielson. So it's written down. And
that's 70 generations before 1900. If you're counting 4 generations per century, then you see that takes us back. Well, we're getting pretty close to 2,000 years of memory here. And of course, I'm the civilized one. I come from the civilized cultures where we write things down, and I can trace my ancestry back to the Franco-Prussian War in the 1870s.
I can't.
We need to learn. We need to learn to appreciate the savages better.
No, I have to be truthful. I only remember 4 generations back. I don't remember like my grandma. She kept going because the French came in at the same time the missionaries went to Tahiti. They were trying to get Tahiti, and not only them. They were on one side of the island, on the other side where the little Tahiti was, where my ancestor was, there was the Bonachea, the Spanish. And we do have Spanish in our family because of that. And then we have the English. And then there were some of the Catholic priests that tried to come in clandestinely inside of the country because they were told not to by the Queen Pomare IV, because she likes the Protestant. She didn't like the Catholic, but they sneak under the back. It's kind of funny when they wrote about it, they came in anyway. They wanted to set their mission. And I wanted to point out something, I don't know, maybe I should share that, but it's in the book if you ever get the chance to read it. But in those days when they were trying to evangelize the church people to their different respective churches, there was one thing that happened to the people of Arroyo. The Catholic Church played a game with the people against each other. And so what they did was, because these people are naked, they started putting clothes on one person and 2. And then, I have clothes on, they love it. And so it made the other people, how did you get that? Well, if you join their church, you get it. And that's how they were able to get the people to join their church, is by, getting the clothes. And I said, that's a weird way to do it, but they were able to do it. And so it's in the book, if you read it. But ours, I think the missionary came and taught the gospel, but they came in Nauvoo, from Nauvoo, and Paul is about to say something. They did not teach polygamy when they came to the Tahitian people. They did not know anything about it, and they never been taught. And so
when Benjamin Garrard got back to California and discovered the Mormons were teaching the polygamy doctrine, he got kicked out of the church because that was foreign to the doctrine that he had been the missionary for as he left Nauvoo in 1843.
So that, just some more history.
Paul,
yes,
I want to thank you for your poetry. The poem to Rina was really beautiful. In fact, my wife and I were holding hands while you were reading it. It was just very beautiful. I wish I was that talented. I mean, I'm more into limericks than iambic pentameter.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Paul. And thank you for mentioning Monty.
Did I hear you mention Benny Hinn? Something about Benny Hinn had a shipping company or something or other? Is that the same Benny Hinn that's the evangelical evangelist?
No. That's Benny Richmond.
Okay, all right, okay. I misunderstood, okay.
Rather curious, Rina,
yes,
that the Catholics put clothes on the naked people to convert them. Aren't we all told to clothe the naked?
Yeah, some of them totally naked, and some have. Their clothes is made out of breadfruit. The bark of it. That's how they made their clothes. So not everybody have clothes on, and but the clothes that they were put on, it's very hot. For that kind of, for the tropical country, island, but they just wore them. Even for example, this is a little bit open, but at the very beginning, our clothes is closed way up here. They don't show anything because the missionary was trying to teach us how to dress.
Didn't the missionary feel kind of like a snake? I mean, God said, "Who told you you were naked?"
But anyway, but the people, yes, they were naked. Some of them half naked. The chief, however, is different. They will have all the clothes on and so forth. And but they made out of bark. So you take a lot of, you cut the tree. I mean, it's a big, huge tree, and it could cover you with it. And you have to put it in the water, they'll soak in the water for a long time, and they beat them until they're mild.
Still harsh.
Yeah, it's still harsh.
Rubs against the skin.
That's why you see sometimes they call the tapa is like a very, how do you say that?
Bark cloth.
Like it's a bark cloth, but they put all the painting on it, and you put on the wall. All of those things are decoration now, but in those days, that's what they wore.
I was making a somewhat philosophical statement. The social gospel of Christianity today is to clothe the naked, feed the hungry, etc. The missionaries from Nauvoo didn't have the resources to do that, so they just took the gospel.
No, they just took the gospel, and little by little, you see, these people had a belief. That's why they're able to switch to a God that they can't see. But their God, they made them. they made their God. They know their God. And this other God is invisible. You don't see him. And they trying to, you try to convince somebody to believe in a God you cannot see. And that's what happened. And then they make them burn their own gods that they made. And that's even more powerful that he's able, you know, I mean, he was able to do that. It's amazing to me.
I think it's interesting, and you've helped me get past this, but that it seems like when missionaries of any of our quote Christian faiths went any place, whether it was the Native Americans or the islanders or wherever, the first thing they did was try to clothe them up to their earlobes because and cover up their nakedness and teach them that their bodies were not acceptable before God. And I found that, you know, you and I've had a lot of discussions about that over the years. I found that rather fascinating that that's something that now we get back to love yourself as you are and accept yourself and know that God will make the necessary changes. And I don't think the first change that God's going to make in me is to make me dress up to my earlobes.
There's one song, a Christmas song that always struck me as odd. It says, you know, do you see what I see? A child shaking from the cold. Let us bring him silver and gold. I could imagine the baby Jesus thinking, does anybody have a blanket?
Yeah. No, they made a lot of changes. I think I'm very proud of the missionaries that went there. They left everything and then go way around the world to bring the gospel and then kicked out of there. But the people there in Tahiti and those islands, they waited for 20 years for anybody to come by. Hey, where are they? And but the funny part about it, they didn't come for them. They were going to Australia. And it just happened there. They had a leak or something like that on their boat. They stopped. And then they found out, hey, we have people out here with John Hawkins and, you know, other few people that stayed with the church. We're waiting. We're waiting for something, you know, anything, come on. And then they're able to send the missionary then to like the Burtons and so forth that came after. But you know, they did a lot of things, the missionary. They went there, they did not know the language. You know what they did? They took the Bible and they used it as a text. They taught my grandparents, my mom, how to read, how to write Tahitian, okay? By using the Bible, because they needed to learn the language themselves. These old people and these people, Polynesian, taught them the language to speak, but they taught them how to write, how to count. And there is a lot of, and then they were able to teach them the gospel. Isn't that beautiful? That is the exchange.
Notice though that Rina's giving credit to the American missionaries. I would like to urge you to pay attention to the fact that John Hawkins' daughter married Moe Faura. Moe was put in charge of the work in Tahiti, and the missionaries, like Benjamin Gerard, went off to Tuamotu, where they would have better success, better chances. Moe Faura, then his son Faura, and his son Abraham Faura produced Rina Faura. Here's one family line that has helped to hold the church together in the Polynesian realm since 1844. And we commonly give, I think, more credit to the European missionaries, but the people that were actually on the ground holding things together was led in major part by this family.
And, and those missionaries, I wanted to say that some of those missionaries that came, they didn't go back home. They died there. And my grandma told me Charles Lake. She was saying though in Tahitian, I couldn't figure out who he was. But this man was in the Tuamotu, in one of those islands that I was talking about, and Amanu. And he was sick. And everybody else was telling him, go back to Tahiti so they could help him. And he said, no, I'm going to stay right here. And his wife was with him. And then his statement, though, wherever the tree falls, you leave it there. Maybe I'm not quoting it correctly, but that's what he said. And he died there at Amanu. And the people loved him so much. They knew that during the cyclone, the coffins are derooted. They will come out and they will be floating on the ocean. And so what they did for him was the Paumotu went and got the coral. They brought it inland and they put like a tin roof or something like that, and then they put this and they burned it. They burned the coral. And my dad said, when you burn the coral, because of the chemical in it, it will hurt your eyes. But that coral turned into cement. And those people from that island poured over where he was buried. So his body stayed there, where the others might be moving around where you go and pick them up and so forth. But they just did that for him. They just loved him so much. They went and got coral, burned the coral, even though it was hurting their eyes and everything. But they covered him, and to this day, it's in the book by the Roots of the Organization, if you read about Charles Lake. Oh, there are others.
The other thing that I would touch on, just as you mentioned, the missionaries, that the Caucasian missionaries have a lot of maybe fanfare is the word, maybe that's not the best word, but similarly speaking, the navigation seemed to need to be proven, and it's kind of like, well, duh. if you're a native islander, and navigating by the stars is not that big of a deal to an islander maybe that has done it and done a lot of the voyages. But I think that the important correlation is the translation. It's the approachability and the understanding of the message, because it's hard to understand something that you don't know. And so sometimes it takes a good translator to those gaps. Janae, did you have something to say? I'm sorry, I said that you went off.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I really appreciate you sharing and your parents sharing. And I knew some of the history, but I didn't know a lot of it. So I learned a lot tonight, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And by the way, Paul and Rina, happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is. It's been a happy anniversary. I took her shopping, and
he loves shopping, you guys.
pushing her through JCPenney for a few hours in a wheelchair is great fun.
No. He's just been very kind.
But we've been sequestered for over a year, and finally this weekend I took her out to dinner at Red Lobster, and so we had a good meal.
My favorite place.
just a delightful occasion. So thank you. But yeah, we are enjoying life together, and how could I be any more blessed if I'm going to be sequestered for a year, then be sequestered.
Rina, he
Yeah.
just enjoys pushing you around.
Oh, I know. He does. He like to push me.
Well, she's done it in the earlier part of my life.
It's okay. Like I said, he just loved going shopping. He said, I have enough of this. So anyway, thank you so much for your patience, because I'm not very good at reading because my eyes, you know, and sometimes I need to go see the doctor. It started getting going like this, you know, seeing double, you know.
Well, you did a beautiful job. It's just that there was so much information in such a short period of time.
Oh.
I had trouble assimilating everything, but I really enjoyed what you were saying.
Well, we try to give you enough to so you have a understanding of the pagan religion, you know, and the way they run things, and then this new religion coming in. There is so much, like you said,
Yeah.
so much into it. But we felt like Marire, you know, like in our family, we kind of felt bad. We, you know, like we said, did we kill somebody? You know, we know we killed somebody's son, but is that Hagar? Or is that, you know, whoever it is, it's not good.
Yeah.
And I was so glad that everything just kind of came down to a point where we see what Christ was trying to tell us. That's why he came. He tried to teach us to be peace, to have peace with each other. And because in those days, what I told you, it was just a little bit with that group, that this group here, that group there. They were fighting. These people were fighting against each other. And then when you lose it, I take yours. And then and so forth. And it's not good.
Among the early Polynesians, there were two types. One were the pacifistic type, the ones that would say, "Harimai tama'a, come and eat." And they didn't last very long, although I think Rina's father exemplifies them. And then the Maori, who are other empire builders, were the ones that became the dominant ones, and so it's their stories that we primarily get to hear. But the fact is that there was in the Polynesian background this very, very accommodating, very generous, welcoming approach to life, and there's still some of that surviving. And I think Rina's parents probably exemplify the two sides of that.
Well, I've had a very charmed life. I've never been called upon to fight, and that's something I'm very thankful of.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say happy anniversary. And once again, I'm absolutely charmed by the stories, and I have always found it interesting, as you guys have once again shown. You have opposition, you have the pacifist, and you have the warriors. And so many of Rina's stories talk about that transformation. And so, as usual, I am totally captivated because I see change and growth, and they really are beautiful stories. And so, once again, I thank you for sharing with us. I feel privileged. So, thank you and good night, dear friends.
Thank you for telling us.
I think I'm going to sign off for tonight myself.
Okay, good night.
Once again, congratulations, guys. I think it's wonderful that you're celebrating 51.
Yeah.
We celebrated 50 pretty well sequestered. Our kids came by to give us a driveway greeting. It was interesting that I think it was Hamana had arranged for us to get the wedding cake replicated so we would have a copy of it. But when the lady that was trying to make the wedding cake for us came to find out what it was like, we had to explain to her that that we didn't actually have a reception. Our wedding came up in such a hurry that no reception was planned, and because Rina had to get married on Sunday in order to keep from being deported.
I was French citizen. I was a French citizen, and we did not, like when we went to see the consul, American consul, they asked for my passport, so I gave it to them. I didn't check the date that following Sunday I could be deported if I'm not married, and so we were thinking we were going to get married, like that was in June. Oh, we're going to get married in July. And the council said, if you did that, you go to Tahiti, you stay in Tahiti, your husband will come back to this date. And I said, how's that? I said, because your passport had expired. And oh my gosh. So on Monday then, Tuesday, Wednesday, we called everybody, we're getting married on Sunday. That's how fast it was, because otherwise I would have been kicked out of the country. And so we got married that way. And let me tell you something else that we did. My dad gives me $25 a month when I was at Graceland. That's all per month. And he thought that was enough, but it wasn't. And so that day I had $25 in my hand, and I had to buy my dress with that. The only thing I could find is a short dress, and it has pants with it. But I took the pants, it's an ensemble. I took it off, and I had at that time we were wearing the mini skirt. So I wore that. And you know how much I spent for my wedding? $23.75 for my dress. And for our hay was $30. And I think that, and my shoes was $6.
Well, at our wedding dinner.
Oh, that was so expensive.
Actually, my brother had made arrangements to make so my car would be out of sight, so it wouldn't get decorated.
That was
and so he did me that favor, but we got in the car with our gifts and proceeded to our apartment. And
I asked him, "You have any money? I'm hungry."
And I pulled out a quarter. At that time, you could buy a hamburger at McDonald's at 23 cents.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a hamburger and a cup
water,
and a cup of water to share
it.
for our wedding dinner. So when the lady tried to make a replica of our wedding cake,
we don't have
we got a good laugh.
But that was all my expense to my wedding, my dress, $23.75.
Our dear friend Paul Loving often commented that he had attended our wedding, and it was brief, it was worshipful, it was one that worked. And he made the comparison that often you go to weddings where people have spent thousands of dollars and then it don't last very long. And so he liked to recommend our style because it seems to have been a good strategy.
We're just poor. Let's say it this way. I just graduated from college, didn't have any money, and just $25 that my dad usually gave me, while I was at Graceland. And I said to myself, what can you buy with $25? Toothbrush, toothpaste, or whatever. But survived it 4 years. And so Paul was working for a year. So we have a little bit of money, but we were poor. We were not, didn't have a lot of money, but we went, we lived, let me say it, we live on $50 a month, and we made it. And so you get creative the way you fix your food.
There's an old adage that says it doesn't, about courtship and marriage. It says it doesn't matter how fast. What matters is that it lasts.
Yeah, it's difficult. I'm not saying it's just like, oh, it's easy. No, because you plan, and that's what it is. And so Anyway,
We're-
thank you for listening, and maybe I said too much, as usual.
We're
glad
glad
to
you
hear.
found each other. I'm glad you found each other.
Thank you.
Well, and isn't it amazing that here we found each other and then afterwards discovered there's a connection in our past? That John Hawkins has been baptized by Benjamin Gerard, whose son becomes the topic of Grandpa DeBarthe's book. You know, it's remote, but nonetheless, find any kind of connection when you marry from 6,000 miles apart, just a bit remarkable. And for me as a teacher, try to inform my students how important it is that all the tracks that you leave behind can count. So take care that you leave the kind of tracks you want.
We're just glad you weren't the fish she threw back.
I'm not the fish that got thrown back.
Oh. All right.
I wanted to comment to Ron Edwards. Ron's still there. We got Father's Day coming up, Ron, and your grandkids are among the handsomest and most beautiful kids that I've seen, and I haven't seen in the last couple of years, but certainly something to be proud of as a grandpa. I recognize that I have perhaps a little bit of a bias that cross-cultural marriages produce these beautiful kids, but you too have seen that. I'm confident.
Well, thank you for that. And of course, we see them quite often. They're only 50 miles away from us. In fact, all of our grandkids are only 50 miles away from us. And we're so proud of them. And they're all so beautiful and so healthy, and everything has gone quite well up to this point. So, and I guess I should mention on the other side, our daughter-in-law, she's fully Indian. That's Indian. Yeah. And then we have one daughter that is American. So we have quite a mixture in our grandkids. Yes.
Yeah.
Very, it's very nice, really.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy came to help us with our luau several times.
Yeah.
In our preparation for the Outreach International fundraiser, and we appreciate her family, her mother.
Yeah, Tateo and I are good friends. Oh, when we were growing up, in Tarona, with Evergraph Field and all of those. So we know each other very well.
Yeah, that's just amazing. Yeah, like I say, small world.
Yeah, it is.
We got word Sunday morning that our granddaughter was in labor to bring our great grandson into the world.
Oh my.
But then I got a message 10:30 this morning saying she's now decided he's staying there to spite her.
Oh.
So I haven't heard anything since, but it sounds like he's still spiting her.
Well, if I recall, the name is Oxley, and maybe he has some of that bullheadedness.
Cool.
Well, we hope for them a good, pleasant separation and a happy life together.
Well, you all have,
Congratulations. Yeah, congratulations, you two. Been a good 51 years with you.
Yeah.
All right, it's after 10 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, and I haven't gotten to McDonald's to get that 23 cent. What are my chances, huh?
He doesn't even like McDonald's. That is so funny. Yeah,
Might
let's
get a
go and
pic-
have some. Well.
You might get a
That's
pickle.
great. Go ahead.
I was just saying you might get a pickle.
Oh, yeah, a pickle. That's just for the fun of it. I think we should get one. Just for memory. It still tastes the same, I think. It's just plain. Oh, boy.
I just want to thank you. I'm Phyllis Weaver. I'm originally from Hawaii, and
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I was at Graceland with you. I was
Phyllis.
unclassified, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I know you. Yes.
And so thank you for your sharing. I enjoyed it. Yes. I'm in Lamoni.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And so,
Right.
yeah. And thank you and happy
Yeah.
anniversary. I do
Yeah.
have your book, the book by Butterworth.
Oh,
Yes.
Butterworth.
And so your sharing will help me, to understand
Yeah.
more. I've started reading it, and so this will give me a more understanding of what you shared. Thank you.
Well,
Phyllis,
yeah.
Phyllis, you'll appreciate that when the Tahitians went to Hawaii, they were the ones that established that pattern where you spread the clan from the sea to the seashore, up onto the slopes and all the way up the mountain, so that you have all the resources available to the clan. And that typically between the rivers, that district would belong to the one clan. And so the clean water and those resources from way up high would be made available to everyone in the clan. The trees that grew on the slopes could be made available to everyone in the clan. The fruits that grew, and when the fishing, the fishermen going out to the sea would also make their fish available to everyone. So everyone was living in a very harmonious condition for most of 1,000 years, and that settlement pattern is a beautiful one, and it's on display there in the Big Island of Hawaii. They got a sort of a museum set up that demonstrates it. But to have Rina's family involved in that kind of migration, and to have the Hawaiians inherit it, and well, it's still there. Although now we divide up all little parcels and make it so people can fight to make up the walls and and keep each other out. But the original plan there was for people to live in harmony with the environment. And that is a message by itself that I think modern man has largely forgotten.
What island do you come from?
On Oahu.
Oahu.
Yes. And
Yeah.
my grandparents were from China, and so they were migrated to Hawaii.
Right.
So that's
Right.
yes.
And we were on Kona, on the Big Island. That's really beautiful too.
Oh, we were on
But,
Oahu.
but we were at the Oahu too.
Yes, yes.
We went to the cultural, center, the Mormon cultural center. That was nice.
On Oahu, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And well, I lived next door to a church, a small church, and that's how I became a member of the church. My grandmother lived right next door, and so, and the Ahunas. I don't know if you know.
I know the Ahunas.
Yes, and yes, and he was the father was my pastor.
Oh,
so that's how. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went to Graceland, and I did come back. See, when I came back to Graceland your year, I was a non-traditional. I had gone 10 years ago, and I came back, and then that's why I met Bill, and then so that's how it ended up.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for sharing. Happy anniversary. I better let you go. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah.
Good night. I guess
Yeah,
it's time,
good
10
night,
o'clock.
and thank you
And
so
have
much
a good evening. Thank
for,
you. Thank you.
Staying with us and talk to us.
Thank you.
Yeah. So.
Well, I see 10:10. I think that's as long as we've never gone on one of these sessions. Thanks for your patience, Deb, to
Yeah,
host
that's
us and
it.
stay
Thank
with
you.
us. It's been a pleasant evening for us, and we really appreciate all of the nice comments that people have made.
And thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Yes.
Okay.
And have a good rest of the week.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Happy 51.
Yeah, thank you.